Engaging with people who voted differently than you does not mean that you are compromising your values. It means that you're recognizing that people are multifaceted, and moral character cannot be solely measured by a single ballot choice.
Thank God for some sanity from women who may have voted against Trump, but they realize that, as she mentioned, that these are complex issues that are held within a person. And then if we try to limit their identity to how they voted, then it really disregards the complexities of life. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to talk about something that might seem like we are trying to make fun of the reactions in light of the recent presidential elections when Trump was declared the 47th president of the United States. Obviously caused a lot of consternation, but there's one group of people in particular who are really struggling and suffering. And what we're going to do is we're going to review some of those reactions and also hopefully provide a pastoral response, because guess what? We have to. Because if we don't love these people, now it's going to be so easy to make fun of it, but we can't. So what we're going to try to do is unpack some of this post-election response, but particularly on the population of women who seem to think that Trump is here to, in a sense, enslave them, take away their rights, and give them no choice in anything in their life. But before we jump into it, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. And also please consider supporting us on our Patreon community, patreon.com/The Father Leo Show, where you get access to some great content, but also support us so that we can continue to kind of unpack some of the things that are happening in the world with hopefully a pastoral perspective. So let's just jump right into it with an appreciation of what faith can do for women in this post-Trump election victory. Now, clearly the reactions are just across the board. We have people who are very happy and even relieved. And then there are some people who are so ecstatic that they are acting almost like bullies, kind of like a sore winner. But then you have, on the other side, the people who voted for Ms. Harris, who might be disappointed, but life has gone on. But from what the reports that I'm hearing is that there's been over 2,000 people who took their own life because they just couldn't deal with the aftermath or the perceived aftermath of the election. And that's, again, what's very sad. I'm going to refer you to the episode that I actually pre-recorded for Wednesday following the election. In that episode, I reminded people that life goes on. But for some people, I think there is almost a need for them to show their anger and their frustration, which really looks more of like just a child who doesn't get what he or she wants at a store, like this.
I can't believe Trump's actually gonna win this fucking thing!
Now this is all gonna be taken away because of him!
I'm so pissed off!
Wake up!
I'm f***ing feral today. Feral!
I'm f***ing angry! I'm mad! I'm upset! I'm angry as f***, bro!
White people, do not go to your black, your indigenous, your immigrant, your queer, your trans. Do not go to that person in your life that you feel is a little bit more oppressed than you are, because obviously you're feeling oppressed, and ask for, help with it.
Men, all of you, and you ugly dumb who voted for him too. You guys are a piece of shit. You guys haven't.
I've honestly heard enough. I mean, this is just outstanding. First of all, the vile nature of it all, and I'm sorry that I'm subjecting you to, hopefully we can blot out all of the curse words. But this is kind of the reaction that I've been seeing for weeks now, and I'm not looking for it. It just keeps showing up on social media because people are still reeling from this just part of human history, part of America's history. And I know that there were people last year who were the last presidential election who were very upset. And so that's where we get these whole January 6th riots / as some would call it, insurrectionists. and again. But the immediate aftermath, we didn't see this kind of obtuse reaction. And if you notice that there's a very common theme in these reactions, the majority of them are women or effeminate men, or at least not masculine men. And I think this has to do a lot with an attack on women. Let's admit that the majority of the people who voted for Ms. Harris were women, and that's fine. That's great. They have a right to vote. Yet, the reason why many of them voted for Ms. Harris was because she was a woman. And so that identity politics kind of falls into people's minds, and it kind of takes over. And it's almost like you take it personally. If you don't support someone who you like, you almost take that personally. And so what we've got to do is, in a response to faith, this is going to sound ridiculous, but you actually have to listen to these people, and you have to try to understand what is going on. And I have had some conversations with people as a public person, as someone who came very clearly stating that this past election should not be about identity, gender, race, or even religion. It should be about policies, not personalities, or not even a person's past, but about the policies of the day. And so, trust me, I got a lot of reaction from people, some even blaming me for Trump's victory. I'm sorry. I live in a very blue state. I have no say in the matter whatsoever. Still did my civic duty, but I think what's ultimately happening here is that we see a nation, or at least a generation, of very entitled people who don't know how to accept the bad things. They simply want to only accept the good things. So if you are one of my listeners who's actually watching this and thinking, I sympathize with these people who are screaming, I'm going to tell you that I think I can understand why, which is why we're going to jump into a conversation on the post-election culture. As I mentioned, the majority of videos that I have seen are women responding to Trump's victory. And this is sad, but this is true. There are inflamed women who are resorting to a 4B movement. And let me just show you this video. And again, we're going to try to blot out all the curse words, but I think you understand that the reason why I'm showing you this is because there are some people who actually are starting to believe their insanity. And as it is, truly insane, like this.
I want the men in this country to know that half the female population, we're dry. We're probably going to stay dry. I'm dry as a desert, baby. And I don't want it to change. Yeah, we're not going to like you anymore. You understand that? Like, it doesn't matter if you take away abortion. Like, we'll want to have your babies even less.
The origins of 4B. It originated in South Korea about 6 years ago as a response to what many South Korean women perceived as a deeply entrenched patriarchal and misogynistic culture. Now, the 4B in the movement's name refers to 4 self-imposed restrictions, each beginning with the letter B in Korean. Number 1, no dating men. Number 2, no sexual relationships with men. 3, no marriage to men. 4, no childbirth. 4 Bs represent a radical rejection of all of the traditional societal expectations placed on women. In South Korea, the movement emerged as a response to a range of issues, including the gender pay gap, workplace discrimination, and a culture of objectification and unrealistic beauty standards for women. It's important to note, too, that the 4B movement in South Korea isn't just about personal choices. It's a form of political protest against a system that many women feel is fundamentally unfair.
Okay, so this is interesting because you can see how a person's politics is actually now including moral decisions. So again, the fact that they don't want to engage in a relationship with men, which basically means that they're not going to get pregnant, and that's going to reduce abortion, but then they're not going to want to get married. You see a lot of people responding saying that, generally from men, that the women who are participating in this 4B movement are not the kind of women they would be wanting to date in the first place. But what's so fascinating for me is that these are people who are vowing, in a sense, celibacy and, to a degree, chastity. And it's quite fascinating because you're seeing how sexuality is seen as a weapon to get what you want. And this has got to strike something, at least in your own thought, that sexuality is supposed to be a gift and a responsibility. And the reason why so many women wanted to fight for their right to take the life of their unborn child is because they feel like they are going to have to do this alone. And we're going to jump into kind of a pastoral response to these issues. But I'm grateful that in the midst of the majority of my feeds when it comes to anything on like social media, at least there are some sane voices of reason, including this one.
As a woman in New Jersey who voted blue, I'm seeing more and more messages from Democrats who are deciding to cut off family members or decades-long friendships because of the election, claiming it's about morality and character and not politics. And I call when you cast your vote every election day, your vote is a representation of the intersection of your personal, economic, and societal priorities, which is influenced by your unique lived experiences. And to dismiss someone's character based on their ballot choices without understanding the broader context of why they voted the way that they did not only closes the door to meaningful dialogue, but you run the risk of turning society into these echo chambers. And I know a number of people who have voted for the Republican Party based on single issues like the Israel-Gaza crisis. And what I'm hearing is that I should be considering those people racist or fascist. And I'm not going to do that. Engaging with people who voted differently than you does not mean that you are compromising your values. It means that you're recognizing that people are multifaceted, and moral character cannot be solely measured by a single ballot choice. Real unity and societal progress comes from building bridges, not walls.
Thank God for some sanity from women who may have voted against Trump, but they realize that, as she mentioned, that these are complex issues that are held within a person. And then if we try to limit their identity to how they voted, then it really disregards the complexities of life. And what I'm finding is that we have not allowed ourselves to enter into complex critical thinking because we have been brainwashed. Again, I'm going to kind of tell you about a pastoral response for issues regarding, in particular, women's issues. And some people are going to say, since you are not a woman, fatherly, you have no right to talk about this. But the fact is, I've got to interact with women. I've not just women who might come to me for pastoral guidance, but even people who come to my restaurant. I work with some women in the restaurant and on the food truck. And so we've got to understand that if we, first of all, use sexuality as the way to define everything about you, then I can understand why you want to vote for somebody who wanted for you to have the autonomy to take the life of another child. But that would be the total lack of critical thinking, and it would literally limit you from engaging with other people who can bring meaning to your life. But then you have things like this.
Dear convicted felon of the United States of America, I just have but one message for you. As a trans woman, as a human being, and as a true American, there is nothing you can do, nothing you can say, no law you can put into place that will stop me from being who I am, what I am, or where I want to go. Nothing you will do will stop me from being a woman. Don't like it? Leave. And for the rest of you who voted for a convicted felon, same goes for you. I go where I please. I use the women's restroom, I use the women's locker rooms, and I will continue to do so, whether you like it or not. Stay mad because you just voted for a convicted felon who ain't gonna do.
This is quite sad, because you can see how women's issues have been taken over by politics, by a false understanding of feminism, and now the transgender movement. It's really quite sad that women have been under great attack. And so this is the culture. Now, what are we going to do as Catholics to respond in love and in kind to people who may be still, to this day, weeks after the election, still reeling and seething? So here's my commentary. This came to head for me when I had a conversation with a woman who was just so upset by the election that there was a little bit of a meltdown. And there was honestly nothing I could say, because this person was just coming at me with so many points. It was just overwhelming for this person to try to kind of sift and discern what was right and what was wrong. Things like the convicted felony, things like debunk stories but haven't actually made it on the news, from the silly thing, there are good people on both sides, or grab her by the you know what. These are just vile things, talking about the fact that, Christians overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump, but he's been in 3 marriages and he's cheated on his wives. And, when this person was talking about her pain, she reminded me, well, she didn't remind me, but she would bring up the fact that as a child, she was mistreated. Her father wasn't very present in her life. Her husband, a former husband that is, was mean to her and somewhat abusive. And that this person finds herself feeling very alone in a very male-led kind of industry. And it really becomes challenging for women to feel like they can truly be independent because of the patriarchal institutional society. And in all of that, part of you might feel like you need to roll your eyes and just be like, this person is just brainwashed. But that's not the Catholic response. And as a priest, it's my job to do more listening than talking. Yes, my job is to talk, but it really requires me to listen twice as hard, not only to the person in front of me, but also to listen to what God is saying to me through this person. That truly is active listening. And what I discovered is that women in particular, since the whole fake feminism movement came about, which has been manipulated particularly by politics, you can see how the laws to tax people was simply intending for more people to tax. That's why women were brought into the workforce. And this idea that women weren't productive members of society as homemakers is another lie that the feminist movement, perhaps manipulated by politics and of course the evil one, was shoved down women's throat, that says that your value is going to be in how much money you bring. But rather it should be the kind of home that you are creating, the environment to make better adult human beings. And therefore women feel like they have to compete against men. But the one thing that women can do is they can become mothers. And let's admit, when you're pregnant, it takes a major toll on your body, on your mind, and your whole worldview changes. And that's just something that makes women, in a sense, the feminine genius of God. But that was completely disregarded because, again, feminism wanted to create a definition that the only way a woman is going to have value is if she competes with men. And as such, women feel like they have a mastery over someone else's body the way they think men have a mastery over them. And that means that they can make decisions that are abusive, including abortive. And that's probably where things really go wrong in this kind of reaction. Because if the only reason why you wanted to vote for a politician is so that you can have unhindered access to killing your unborn child, then I know that we've got some problems here. And so what is our pastoral response? Number one, please don't argue. Number two, please don't belittle. And again, you watch some of these videos and you probably want to laugh out loud. And trust me, there are times when I think, are these people being real? And to be honest with you, some of these people might be fake, but a lot of them are truly feeling this rage. I mean, they kind of have to choreograph and actually push record and set up their camera so that they can get a good view of them screaming. But let's just admit that there are just some people who have bought into the cult. And when things change, not according to their plan, they take drastic measures emotionally on themselves and inflict it onto others. So we can't argue. If you are of sound mind, you can't argue. Secondly, you cannot belittle these people. It's not, and when I say these people, I'm talking about people who are really struggling. Thirdly, you don't have to baby them or coddle them. You just have to listen to them and then get permission to say, would you like to have a conversation about this? If you do, let's then have an organized conversation where you kind of go in very specific order of the things that you want to discuss. That's what I'm going to do eventually. I'm going to kind of put together a fact sheet. And if somebody, and with hyperlinks. So if somebody says, well, you voted for a convicted felon, I'm going to have fact sheets, again, not to make them like Trump, but to let them know that what they're experiencing isn't actually true. And I'm going to try to create some fact sheets that just going to point out that what they believed was probably not 100% true. Now, again, am I excusing, the current president-elect of just saying that he's an innocent man? Again, I firmly believe that if you get to any level at that level of power, that you're probably not a saint. Because if you were a saint, you would have been martyred. And again, we can say Trump almost was martyred. And so I'm not going to say anything about his character. I'm just going to try to address the facts. And so my point is, again, don't argue, don't belittle, and maybe have an organized conversation. And when I say an organized conversation, I'm talking about like putting together an actual fact sheet based on these allegations. And then the fourth, probably the most important thing you can do is pray for this and pray for them, but also pray for Catholic mental health professionals. We don't have enough of them. We as Catholics have the best understanding of psychology because the word psychology comes from the Greek psyche, which means soul. And so I know that a good psychologist is going to help a person do some more soul searching, because when you do, you can find God there, and God, and only God, not a president, only God can give you peace. I hope that this episode gives a little bit more perspective on what is actually happening in the real world. I know that some people make comments and say, Father Leo, I can't believe that you actually posted those videos. But it's only because some people don't actually see them in their For You page. For whatever reason, it's coming to mine. And that's fine. And some of it is coming to my team because they want me to at least offer a reaction to it. But not a reaction that is going to argue, and not a reaction that's going to belittle them, but a reaction as more of a response that's going to try to have these conversations in a real clear way. And then I do really suggest that we pray, and even fast for any of these folks who might be really struggling. And then 5, pray also for good Catholic mental health professionals, because they are much needed in today's very confused and divided world. Again, thank you for listening. I hope that this helps. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. And also, please consider supporting us on our Patreon community so that we can continue to provide good Catholic pastoral response to the issues at hand. We call it Dishing Out: Faith, Culture, and Commentary. God bless you, and stay hungry for God.